Welcome to another edition of the Gridiron Report. I'm Jarret Johnson. I'm joined by the mighty Joe Yeager. Well, mighty Joe, we had the day after podcast, so we did have some time to reflect on that impressive, almost like season-saving victory at Iowa State. Big, impactful victory. But man, no rest for the weary. Now the Red Raiders return back to the Jones after 2 games on the road. They host Colorado. Very good team. I think perhaps even maybe better in terms of overall substance than I think most were expecting, including myself. They come in 6-2 overall, 4-1 in the Big 12, while the Red Raiders are 6-3 overall and 4-2 in the Big 12. That's a 3 p.m. kickoff here at the Jones. The game will be on Fox, nationally televised. The Fox Noon kickoff show and all that stuff, which I don't know how much you care about, but all the glitz and glamour and the attention, you know, in the conference at least, appears to be for this week here in Lubbock. What's your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, it's a huge one. You know, I mean, it's a consequence of winning some ball games. You know? I mean, and your opponent winning some ball games, obviously. And you know, the whole idea with the season is that you just want every game to become more and more important as you go along, and for the most important games to take place in November. Now, you had your hiccup there with Baylor and TCU, and it looked like things weren't going to go as you wanted. But again, you mentioned Iowa State, and that puts you back on track. So there's still an awful lot of meaningful football to be played, starting here with Colorado. And, you know, that fact is recognized around the conference and arguably around the country right now. So there's a lot of eyeballs on this thing right now. Whichever team wins this game is going to be in a really great position for a shot at a Big 12 title. So, you know, it's an awful lot at stake right now.
It really is, and that's so fun to say. How many years we've been doing this, where at this point I was like, well, let's see if they can get to a bowl game. You know, well, that's already in hand. You have 3 games left. Obviously, this one takes center stage. Now, in terms of the matchup itself, and it really appears that Colorado is strong, where perhaps Texas Tech, not so much. Obviously, Shedeur Sanders, very good quarterback. Maybe, you know, he's one of the top handful of quarterbacks in the country, certainly in the conference. His receiving core is special. People like to talk about Travis Hunter, and deservedly so. The guy is a freak, but and a very good competitor. But that whole receiving core is strong. There's 3, 4, maybe even more than that guys that will hurt you against Tech secondary, which has struggled, although the defense played better last week against Iowa State. And then on the other end, I believe Colorado leads the conference in sacks, and your offensive line is probably the weak link. You have all those really good skill position players. The offensive line's been better, but it's still, in my estimation, probably the weak link on that side of the ball. So that's going to be interesting to see how Texas Tech combats those 2 areas.
Yeah, that sums it up pretty well. You know, I think most of the attention falls on Colorado's offense. I mean, they get the publicity for the most part. I mean, for obvious reasons, the quarterback, Hunter plays D too. He's just as good on defense as he is on offense. But those receivers and everything, and so it's a sort of a high octane, entertaining kind of an offense. Gets a lot of attention, but I think Colorado's defense is overlooked, overrated or underrated. They're a pretty tough unit, and I believe that Texas Tech may actually have more problems, strange as it sounds, with Colorado's defense than their offense. And the reason I say that is because you mentioned part of it, the sacks. Getting into the backfield, lots of TFLs, and just overall a really solid defense. I mean, they're pretty good against the pass, pretty good against the run, and as I said, they're very active as well. And on the other side, though, now Colorado's offense, for as great as they are at passing the game, they have no running game whatsoever. I mean, 60 yards per game, I think 2.8 yards per carry.
It's actually better, I think, this year than it was last year, though.
That's hard to believe. So, I mean, by its very nature, that's a one-dimensional offense. You shouldn't have to devote any extra attention and, resources to stopping the run, which means you should be able to devote more attention to the passing game. Which, I mean, and you'll need to do it to have any shot at slowing those guys down. But you might be able to do that. I mean, they're going to get their yardage. They're going to get some points. But I think Tech's defense has actually got a shot. We've seen them put a little bit more pressure on opponents these last couple of games. They went to the to the even front, and that's seemingly made a difference. Esters and Dyson at the ends are doing some good work now, and I see some hope for Texas Tech's defense actually in this game.
That really does appear to be the key. They're going to have to affect Shedeur Sanders, and then once they do, look, the dude is great in terms of going off script, running around and finding receivers who also do a good job working back to the ball and helping Sanders out in terms of getting open when everything breaks down. So once they do actually get him off his spot, get him out of the pocket, they have to keep playing. They have to keep chasing him. They have to kind of funnel him, whether it be to the sideline or to help or whatever. It's got to be a group effort. But I do have a little bit of hope in terms of Tech being able to do that based off their performance the last 2 weeks in terms of up front, getting pressure on opposing quarterbacks. Against TCU, they did a better job. And against Iowa State, it was a huge difference from what we saw earlier in the year in terms of yes, Harvey Dyson, yes, Charles Esters, those inside linebackers blitzing too, who, just a couple of studs, and Ben Roberts and, man, Jacob Rodriguez, who was Big 12 Defensive Player of the Week last week. But the actual defensive lineman, the interior defensive lineman got more pressure. It was consistent pressure on Iowa State's quarterback. And I think that was really as big of a story of the game as anything. I think it's, probably should be talked about more. And I asked McGuire about it and DeRuyter about it in the Monday presser. And it was interesting to me. DeRuyter said one of the differences was that with Tony and Jalen Hutchins and Tony Bradford, they could play what they call static, like just called their base defense, and they were good enough to make plays in terms of knifing in the backfield or just physically dominating their guys or just being veterans and knowing what was coming and all that. With these younger guys, while they're skilled, you can't just be static with them. They tried to just give them like one thing to focus on. And now it's like, you know what? Let's stunt them. Let's loop. Let's slant in the hole. Let's get some movement up front, get their momentum going. And that seemed to really jumpstart the entire defensive front last week against Iowa State. I think that was a huge change, a big development possibly we'll see this week. We'll definitely be tested. But we'll see this week if that continues. Mighty Joe, what do you think about I talked about all the attention, but the magnitude for Texas Tech and Colorado for this game? Like if they win this game with 2 left, Texas Tech, like what would that mean for the Red Raiders?
Yes, well, I mean, that sets you up with Oklahoma State on the road, West Virginia here. And, on paper, those 2 games don't look as daunting as the Iowa State game and the Colorado game.
Yeah.
All right. So if you win those 2 difficult games, Iowa State and Colorado, and at least in theory, you've got a pretty good shot at winning out.
Yeah.
So
we'll see. It's a Big 12.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, college football is just crazy. You can't go by what's on paper.
No.
Exclusively.
Right.
The paper goes up in flames too often. Well, when I say too often, it makes things interesting.
That's why we love it, man.
Static. Yeah. You want people to argue and fight and debate about what everything means and so forth and so on. So you got to have unpredictability, and that is the case. But I mean, look, beat Colorado, and at least you set yourself up really, really well. And that's all you can ask for at this point, just to give yourself a chance. And that would do it.
Yeah, Texas Tech has earned the right to be in a game of this magnitude. Can they do it again in terms of beat Colorado at home? And then, like you said, you have a bye week, and it sets you up those final 2 games to, man, like things could get real in a hurry. You start really getting excited about the possibilities. So you did it last week. You got to do it again against another strong opponent. I can't wait for the game. I can't wait to see what happens. But Mighty Joe, man, great stuff from you as always. Thank y'all for watching, and until next time.